In October of 2008, someone published a 9-page white paper explaining how to fix money. In March of 2013, the government of Cyprus confiscated money from people's bank accounts to pay for a bailout, and Bitcoin hit $1,000 for the first time. In 2016, central banks in Europe and Japan pushed interest rates below zero, meaning you had to pay them to hold your money, and Bitcoin had its second halving. In March of 2020, the Federal Reserve printed $4 trillion in 8 weeks, and Bitcoin broke through $20,000. In 2020, inflation hit a 40-year high, and Bitcoin hit $69,000. In 2024, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. Major corporations started adding Bitcoin to their treasuries, and Bitcoin ETFs were approved by the SEC, allowing billions of dollars to flow into the system. And right now, in early 2026, we're seeing countries like Argentina and Nigeria adopting Bitcoin at an accelerating rate, while traditional banks are crumbling under the weight of their own debt. Here's the problem. The money we're using right now, the US dollar and all the other fiat currencies, they're actually getting worse over time. And I'm not talking about inflation in some abstract sense. I'm talking about a fundamental design flaw. The people who control the money supply can create more of it whenever they want. And they do, constantly. In 1971, when the US disconnected the dollar from gold, there were about $800 billion in circulation. Today, there's over $20 trillion. That's a 25x increase in the money supply. And here's the crazy part. The amount of actual goods and services in the economy didn't increase 25x. The population didn't increase 25x. We just created more money. And when you create more money without creating more value, each unit of money becomes worth less. That's not an opinion. That's math. Now, let me ask you something. If you owned a technology that could create more of itself whenever it wanted, would you use it? Of course you would. Everyone would. That's exactly what governments do. They create money to pay for things they can't afford. Wars, social programs, bailouts. And they do it because they can. There's no limit, no constraint, nothing stopping them from creating as much money as they want. And here's the part that will blow your mind. This isn't new. Every fiat currency in history has eventually failed. Every single one. The Roman denarius, the Chinese flying cash, the French assignat, the German mark in the 1920s, the Zimbabwean dollar, the Venezuelan bolivar. They all followed the same pattern. They started out stable, then governments started creating more money. Then inflation accelerated. Then people lost faith in the currency. Then the currency collapsed. Every time. Now you might be thinking, okay, but that can't happen to the US dollar. We're the reserve currency. We're different. And I understand that thinking. It feels safer to believe that, but here's the thing. Every failing currency in history also believed they were different. The Romans believed their empire would last forever. The British believed the pound sterling would always be the world's reserve currency. They were wrong. And the data suggests we're heading down the same path. So what does this have to do with Bitcoin? Everything. Because Bitcoin is the first monetary technology in history that solves this problem. It's the first money that can't be created by any government. It's the first money with a fixed supply. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Not 21 million and one. Not 21 million and a half. Exactly 21 million. And that number is written into the code. It's enforced by mathematics, not by promises or politicians. Think about that for a second. Imagine if you could invent a monetary system where no one could create more money, where the supply was fixed and predictable, where everyone knew exactly how much money would exist 100 years from now. What would happen to the value of that money over time? If the money supply is fixed, but the economy keeps growing, each unit of money becomes more valuable. That's the opposite of what happens with fiat currency. And here's the kicker. Bitcoin has been doing this for over 15 years, through financial crises, through government crackdowns, through exchange collapses, through everything. And it's still working. The supply is still fixed. The network is still secure. People are still using it. This isn't a theory. This is a working monetary system that's been operating in the real world for over a decade. But here's the thing most people miss. They look at the price of Bitcoin in dollars, and they think that's what determines its value. They think if Bitcoin goes from $60,000 to $40,000, it lost value. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is the dollar is changing value. Bitcoin is the ruler. The dollar is the thing being measured. Think about it this way. If you have a ruler that's 12 inches long and you measure a table and it's 60 inches long, that's the table's length. Now imagine if the ruler started shrinking Over time, the ruler gets shorter and shorter. The table doesn't change, but if you measure it with the shrinking ruler, it appears to be getting longer and longer. That's exactly what's happening with Bitcoin. The dollar ruler is shrinking. Bitcoin, the asset, isn't changing. But when you measure it in dollars, it appears to be going up. And here's the part that will really mess with your head. The people who created Bitcoin knew this would happen. They designed Bitcoin to be a response to the 2008 financial crisis. They saw what the Federal Reserve was doing. They saw the banks getting bailed out while regular people lost their homes. They saw the fundamental problem with a monetary system that can be manipulated by a small group of people. And they created a solution that's open to everyone, a solution that doesn't require permission from any government or bank, a solution that works the same for everyone, everywhere in the world, a solution that's controlled by mathematics, not by humans. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too good to be true. There must be a catch, and you're right to be skeptical. But here's the thing. The catch is that you have to actually understand how it works. You have to do the work of learning something new. And most people won't do that. Most people will stick with what they know. They'll keep their money in dollars because that's what they understand. They'll watch their purchasing power disappear year after year because that feels safer than learning something new. And that's exactly why most people will miss this wealth transfer. Because wealth transfers don't happen to people who are paying attention. They happen to people who are asleep. The people who are still thinking in terms of dollars instead of thinking in terms of monetary systems. The people who are still playing the old game while the rules are being rewritten. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you have $100,000 in a savings account. Right now, that feels safe. You can see the balance. It's insured by the government. You can access it whenever you want. But here's what's actually happening. If inflation is running at 5% per year and your savings account is paying 0.5% interest, you're losing 4.5% of your purchasing power every year. In 10 years, your $100,000 will only have the purchasing power of about $63,000. You didn't lose any money on paper, but you lost $37,000 of actual purchasing power. Now imagine that same $100,000 invested in Bitcoin over the same 10-year period. I'm not going to give you a specific number because that sounds like speculation. But let me ask you this. If Bitcoin is a better monetary technology than fiat currency, and if more and more people adopt it over time, what direction do you think the value will go? If the supply is fixed, but demand is increasing, what happens to the price? This isn't rocket science, it's supply and demand. But here's the thing. Most people never even ask these questions. They never think about the fundamental properties of the money they're using. They just accept what they're given. They use dollars because everyone else uses dollars. They save in banks because that's what their parents did. They follow the invisible script without ever questioning whether it's still working. And that's the real opportunity here. The opportunity isn't to speculate on price. The opportunity is to understand that the monetary system is changing, to see that the old system has fundamental flaws, to recognize that a new system exists that solves those flaws, and to position yourself accordingly before everyone else figures it out. Now, let me be clear about something. I'm not telling you to put all your money into Bitcoin. I'm not telling you to sell your house and go all in. That would be irresponsible. What I'm telling you is that you need to understand what's happening. You need to understand that the money you're using is losing value over time. You need to understand that there's an alternative, and you need to make a conscious decision about which monetary system you want to use for your wealth. Because here's the thing. This decision is being made for you whether you like it or not. Every day that you hold dollars, you're choosing to participate in a monetary system that's designed to lose value. Every day that you don't diversify into Bitcoin, you're choosing to let your wealth be transferred to people who do understand what's happening. And that's the real tragedy of this whole situation. The people who are going to miss this wealth transfer aren't stupid people. They're not lazy people. They're just people who haven't taken the time to understand what's happening. They're busy with their lives. They're working hard. They're raising families. They don't have time to read 800-page reports about monetary systems. They're just trying to get by. And the system knows this. The system relies on people not paying attention. The system relies on people being too busy or too confused to question what's happening with their money. That's how the wealth transfer works. It's not a conspiracy. It's just the natural outcome of a monetary system that benefits the people who understand it at the expense of the people who don't. But here's the good news. You don't have to be one of the people who misses this. You can choose to understand. You can choose to learn. You can choose to position yourself on the right side of this transfer. So where do you start? First, you need to understand the basics. What is Bitcoin? How does it work? Why is it different from fiat currency? And I'm not talking about watching some YouTube video that tells you to buy Bitcoin because it's going to the moon. I'm talking about actually understanding the technology, reading the white paper, learning about the mining process, understanding how transactions work. This stuff isn't that complicated. Anyone can learn it if they're willing to put in the time. Second, you need to understand the history of money. How did we get here? Why do we use fiat currency? What happened to the gold standard? What have other countries done when their currencies failed? This history will help you understand that what's happening now isn't new. It's happened before, and it's happening again. Third, you need to understand the current state of adoption. Who's using Bitcoin? Why are they using it? What are governments doing about it? What are institutions doing? What are regular people in countries with failing currencies doing? This will help you see that this isn't some fringe movement. This is a global shift in how people think about money. Fourth, you need to make a plan. How much of your wealth should be in Bitcoin? When should you buy it? How should you store it? These aren't decisions you should make on impulse. You should have a strategy. You should understand the risks. You should have a plan that makes sense for your situation. And fifth, you need to take action, because here's the thing. Understanding isn't enough. You actually have to do something. You have to buy some Bitcoin. You have to set up a wallet. You have to secure your keys. This stuff can be intimidating at first, but it's not that hard once you get started. And the sooner you start, the more time you have to learn and adjust. Now, I want to address something that comes up a lot. People ask me, isn't Bitcoin too volatile? How can it be money if the price goes up and down so much? And that's a fair question. But here's the thing. Volatility is a feature, not a bug. Bitcoin is still in the process of being discovered. It's still in the process of being adopted. Every new technology goes through this phase. The internet was volatile in the 1990s. Amazon stock was volatile in the early 2000s. That's what happens when something new is being discovered. But here's what's interesting about Bitcoin's volatility. If you look at it over longer time frames, the volatility decreases. As more people adopt it, as more institutions get involved, as the market becomes deeper, the price swings become less extreme. This is exactly what you'd expect from a maturing asset class. And we're seeing it happen in real time. And here's another thing to consider. What's more volatile? An asset that goes up and down in price but has a fixed supply and can't be manipulated? Or a currency that loses 5 to 10% of its purchasing power every single year, consistently, predictably, forever? Because that's what fiat currency does. Its value doesn't swing wildly. It just goes in one direction, down, slowly, inexorably, until your wealth has been transferred to someone else. So when people ask me about Bitcoin's volatility, I ask them about the dollar stability. Because the dollar isn't stable. It just looks stable because the changes happen slowly. But over 10 years, over 20 years, over 30 years, the loss of purchasing power is massive. And that's a form of volatility too. It's just slow motion volatility that people don't notice because it's happening to everyone at the same time. Now, let me talk about something else that comes up a lot. People ask me, won't governments just ban Bitcoin? And I understand why people ask this. Governments have banned things before. They've banned drugs. They've banned guns in some places. They've banned all kinds of things. So why wouldn't they ban Bitcoin? And here's the thing. Governments have tried. China banned Bitcoin mining. India has threatened to ban it. Various countries have made it difficult or illegal to use. And here's what happened. Bitcoin kept working. The network kept running. People kept using it because Bitcoin doesn't need permission from any government to exist. It's a decentralized network. Anyone with an internet connection can use it. You can't ban mathematics. You can't ban a protocol that's already been deployed. And here's the other thing. Governments are realizing that banning Bitcoin isn't practical. Some governments are actually embracing it. El Salvador made it legal tender. Other countries are exploring similar moves. And even the governments that are hostile to Bitcoin are still having to deal with it. They can't ignore it. They can't pretend it doesn't exist. It's too big. Too many people are using it. Too much wealth is stored in it. So the question isn't whether governments will try to control Bitcoin. The question is whether they'll be able to. And the evidence so far suggests they won't. At least not completely. They might regulate it. They might tax it. They might make it harder to use. But they can't kill it. Because Bitcoin isn't a company or a product. It's a network. And networks are incredibly resilient. Now, I want to circle back to something I said earlier about the wealth transfer. Because I think a lot of people misunderstand what this means. When I talk about a wealth transfer, I'm not talking about Bitcoin going to some crazy price and making a bunch of people rich. That might happen, but that's not the real wealth transfer. The real wealth transfer is the shift from a monetary system that loses value over time to a monetary system that holds value over time. It's the shift from a system where your wealth is constantly being diluted to a system where your wealth is protected. It's the shift from a system where you have to constantly work and invest just to maintain your purchasing power to a system where your savings actually retain their value. This is the fundamental shift, and it's happening whether you participate or not. The people who understand this and position themselves accordingly will preserve their wealth. The people who don't will see their wealth slowly transferred away year after year until it's too late. And here's the thing that makes me so frustrated about this. This isn't complicated. The math is simple. The history is clear. The technology is open for anyone to examine. Anyone can understand this if they're willing to put in a little bit of time. But most people won't. They'll keep doing what they've always done. They'll keep trusting the system that's failing them. They'll keep losing wealth without even realizing it. And that's why I made this video. Not because I want to sell you anything, not because I want you to buy my course, but because I want you to understand what's happening. I want you to see the wealth transfer that's occurring right in front of your eyes. I want you to have the information you need to make a different choice. Because here's the thing, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We're living through a transition in monetary systems. This kind of thing doesn't happen often. The last time it happened was when the world moved from gold to fiat currency. And that transition created winners and losers. The people who understood what was happening positioned themselves accordingly. The people who didn't saw their wealth destroyed. We're in the middle of another transition right now, and you have a choice. You can be one of the people who understands what's happening and positions yourself accordingly, or you can be one of the people who misses it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds overwhelming. There's so much to learn, so much to understand, and I get that. But here's the thing. You don't have to learn everything at once. You don't have to become an expert overnight. You just have to start. You just have to take the first step. And that first step is understanding that the monetary system is changing, that the money you're using has fundamental flaws, that there's an alternative. That's it. Once you understand that, everything else follows. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to spend 1 hour this week learning about Bitcoin. Read the white paper, watch some educational videos, talk to someone who understands it. Just spend 1 hour, that's all. If you do that, you'll be ahead of 99% of the population because most people will never spend that 1 hour. They'll never take that first step. They'll keep doing what they've always done and they'll miss the wealth transfer. But you won't because you're watching this video, you're taking the time to understand, you're asking the right questions, and that puts you in a position to make a different choice. So here's my question for you. Are you going to be one of the people who understands what's happening? Or are you going to be one of the people who misses it? The choice is yours. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. I make videos like this every week, breaking down complex financial topics in a way that actually makes sense. If you want to understand money, if you want to understand what's happening with the economy, if you want to position yourself for the wealth transfer, instead of missing it, this is the channel for you. Thanks for watching. And remember, the psychology of money isn't about picking assets. It's about understanding which game you're playing. And right now, the game is changing. Make sure you're playing the right one.